another episode of the Inspired Disorder Podcast. With our hosts, Ray Taylor and Keith Spurlock. Disorder starts now.
And not only is it Keith and I, but we're honored to be joined by none other than Daniele Bolelli from the Drunken Taoist podcast and everything else, Joe Rogan podcast, Duncan Trussell podcast. How you doing tonight, Daniele?
Very well, thanks. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I don't know where you want to start, Keith. Where do you want to start? We can start.
Well,
go ahead.
I want to start by saying I tried to do as much research on you as I could today by eating mushrooms and watching The Hobbit.
That's a good start.
And I feel that I didn't really get the grasp of everything that you were trying to portray.
Oh, damn. Such a good plan, and it didn't work.
I know, it just didn't pan out for me. But no, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. I know Ray has also.
Absolutely.
I've got your first two books, and I've read them both. And I think I actually tweeted you a long time ago that I hate to say this, but every time I take a shit, I think of you.
That's I am so moved. That's the sweetest thing I've heard today.
Because the 50 Things book is the perfect book to put by your toilet.
That's basically what is designed like, right? Just have like 3 pages chapter where just good enough for a good session, right?
Yeah, and it works great. I love the book. My mom, devout Catholic, hates the book, but I love the book.
Yeah, I can see how that would work that way.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having video issues right now. I can't get Keith on, but yeah. So I actually got your book as well. Are you there? Are you guys there? Okay.
I'm here.
Make sure I didn't drop everybody. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. The newest book.
Well, you are officially excused. That's
okay,
long.
Thank you very much.
It's pretty big, Create Your Own Religion is 300 pages, something like that. So it's a solid book. Unlike the 50 Things, that quick and to the point, this one develops a bit deeper.
Yeah. No, I started to read the 50 Things because I have it on my Kindle, but I've been so busy lately that the only way I've been able to do any reading is through audiobooks. So it's not really reading. It's just,
right.
I can have it in my ear and doing other things. Is there any plans for your newest book to be in audio form?
As far as I know, no. But the thing is, as much as it may sound weird, as the author, I have very little say in this whole process. Because really this is a thing where if the publisher want to do it, they hook up with Audible and they decide something and all of that. Now, because the feeling I got is that the publisher is not super interested in doing that, then it would be up to me to try to jump with the publisher, try to convince them, get them in motion, get Audible in motion, and I just don't have the damn time and energy to do that at this point. So I'm afraid you'll just have to read the damn book. But no, I like the idea of the audiobooks, and a bunch of people ask me about it. So I think it's something that I would love to do at some point. It's just that in terms of time and energy, this is not that point.
Yeah. So when did you start writing?
I always, I remember as a kid, I would always spend time writing. Since when I was, 10, 11, I would just do a bunch of that. And just because I was, my nerdy self, and I would spend a bunch of time doing that. Then I wrote my first book in Italy. It got published when I was 22, so I was still pretty damn young. It eventually was translated and morphed into On the Warrior's Path several years later, because, initially I was just, my English sucked too bad. There was no way I could possibly translate it decently. After quite a few years, my English improved. I was able to do that, add some chapters, and then that one I added more chapters down the road. So On the Warrior's Path, as it currently exists, is a long work in progress over many years.
So
But
is it?
you're-
Have you revised it since now?
Yeah.
That okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, lots of the ideas are the same.
Yeah.
Like original, right now there are 13 chapters. Originally in the Italian version there were 8, and then those 8 they stayed maybe 70% the same, and I just cut and change a few things, and then I added 5 more.
Nice. Yeah, because I know, I mean, one of the arguments I have with people that are like super religious is the fact that, this book that, for one, they're quoting like it happened verbatim, is that it's been translated a bunch of times. And I always give the example of like Jackie Chan movies where,
Right.
those can't be like when he speaks, like the subtitles you're reading can't be, it's not that accurate. Can't be.
No, and that's just the nature of the business. One of my first jobs was actually when I was a teenager. I translated a Terence McKenna book into Italian, and first Terence McKenna writes in a way that's so damn complicated, but beside that, just the translation process, I realized that is kind of hopeless to expect that the translation will really be 100% equal to the original. You just can't, because it doesn't sound the same. Even if you translate it literally, just loses a lot of meaning. So translations are a work of art. You try to capture the spirit, and a bunch of stuff along the way will get lost, and that's just part of the game.
Awesome. Yeah, and just so everybody, now that I got the technical problems out of the way, just so everybody knows who you are. I mean, I'm sure the majority of our listeners know who the fuck you are, which they
The most
should.
good-looking man on earth.
Exactly. And that's why we couldn't show you on live, because there's a situation. JR, last episode, he took his shirt off during the podcast, and Ustream has a problem with like good-looking people getting broadcast over their system, because it crashes it in some weird way. So I'm just, as a precautionary measure, we don't have you on video. But yes, aside from being like the most gorgeous man ever, I think ever is the technical.
I'm glad you found the correct word. Yes.
Thank you. I all week I've been thinking of the correct words to describe your manly beauty. But in addition to that, in addition to writing, you teach history.
Yep.
You train MMA. Have you ever fought MMA?
Yeah,
Okay.
twice. Twice as pro, and then a bunch of times in like smokers and lower level thing. Well, even my pro stuff was kind of really low level, but still, it'll sound cool to say it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's...
What's your record?
No, I mean, I won, but again, this is like my fights
shit.
where
The
it was kind of
undefeated Daniele Bolelli.
But then again, my so-called pro fights were like the lowest possible level of professional thing. It was in Italy, where it was several years behind US. So even though I fought like in...
Still beat up a trained guy. Like
that's, there's something to pat yourself on the back about, but at the same time, it's nowhere comparable to MMA now. So
it's more than beating up a dude at a bar.
Yeah.
So you're like a modern day Renaissance man.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, that's what it's about, right? It's like, to me, I'm interested in life.
Yeah.
All of life. I'm not interested in one particular field. To me, you learn the most, you get the most out of any field when you connect it to a bunch of others.
Yeah.
By itself, if it's its own little ghetto separate from everything else, I lose interest fairly quickly. It's like, what's the point? Yeah, great. Now you know how to punch people in the face. Good for you. So what? Now you know everything that happened in history. Who the fuck cares unless you apply it to other aspects of life,
Yeah.
So to me, it's really about knowledge is all about interconnectedness and how you use it, not knowledge for knowledge's sake, and definitely not about one field by itself, disjointed from all others.
Yeah, it's like any MMA fighter. Well, not any MMA fighter, but what seems to be happening in MMA, it's not the specialists that are really dominating. It's the guys that are well-rounded and applying that to real life, or at least finding, for me, what I've found the most success in, which I haven't really found any success, but anyway, is focusing on the main things that I care about, and just applying myself towards not just one specific thing, but, a few different aspects, and not only pursuing those separately, but also seeing how they can tie themselves into each other and support each other.
Absolutely, you learn more that way. Not only you know more in general, because you know more about more than one field, but even the one field that you become a specialist in, you actually learn oddly more by looking at other fields than if you are looking at that one field by itself.
Yeah, it's like kind of reading or knowing the schematics of how a certain machine is built, and then applying those same ideas to another type of machine or another kind of endeavor. Yeah, it's
You want to be a man who wears many hats.
Yeah, more fun, right?
Exactly.
Because you don't want to look the same every day, but you want to still you present yourself in a different way. Like I've always worn hats my entire life, and I know it's a weird way to look at it, but you always want to have a different hat to put on for a different situation.
Yeah, because
being a Renaissance man, yeah, or having a little bit from each thing to pull from, it's like wearing a different hat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's somebody who you speak. It's like speaking in a sense, running with the hat metaphor and extending it further to something else. It's like speaking different languages. You know, you can reach more people with the more languages you speak. You can. It's like if my nerdy history or writing self is to have a conversation with some guy straight from South Central LA, gangster. If all I am is about my nerdish self, we are never going to understand each other, and it's probably going to beat the hell out of me. If in addition to my nerdish self, there's something else that can relate to him, and that, whether it is because of my passion for illegal activities, whether it's because I like punching people, whether it's because, the kind of thing that somebody coming from a rougher background could relate to, then suddenly you can talk also about things that you couldn't talk otherwise. Then it's like, oh, wait, your weird nerdy stuff is actually kind of fun because you have established some common bonds first in a language that you both understand, and then you can go into another direction as well.
Absolutely. You become like a wild card, and life is a poker game.
Yeah, big time.
So what is out of the things that make up who you are, what's like your favorite thing? Like if you introduce yourself and they ask what you do or who you are, I don't know, what is like the basic like thing that you enjoy overall that you're into?
Yeah, I don't think there is one. I really don't think there is one, because anyone that I can think of, if that's all that I'm about, no, I will lose interest real quick.
Yeah, that's cool. It's hard to find the balance sometimes, You get focused. What takes up most of your time?
I mean, I'm teaching a bunch, so of course there's that. There's
which, by the way, like for me, I'm not a fan of school or
me neither.
Yeah, but like I would love to take your class. Just like that would be like out of the teachers, that the people always talk about, like the teacher that inspires them, or growing up or whatever. I had a few of those, but you're like the teacher that inspires, like in my 30s,
No, and that's when I have a good course is because I'm excited about it, because I'm on. And, most of the time I feel that I am, if there's any secret to making it fun, is that I'm trying to have fun. I'm there because I enjoy what I'm doing, enjoy what I'm talking about. I have a passion for it. And so if you have a passion, then somebody being in the student position, it becomes easier to relate to, because they're not just relating to material, you're relating to why are you so damn excited to tell me about this next thing, And that's how, they said that they did these stats of having students do teachers' evaluations within the first 5 minutes of when they meet a professor, and then the same thing at the end of the semester. Mm-hmm. And they almost always look the same, meaning like you or not within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the knowledge you have, because clearly in the first 5 minutes they haven't tested it yet. They don't know how much you do or do not know. is how into what you're doing you are, how much passion you into the game. That's what truly makes the difference.
Now, what you said on podcasts before, I happen to enjoy. On your first day of school, you go in and you play a Red Hot Chili Pepper song,
Yep.
which is my favorite band, and then you go meet and introduce yourself to all of the students.
Yeah, I shake hands with everybody because it seems the weird thing is that doing something like that, pressing play and putting some music on and shaking hands with people is seen as a strange thing, and I get points for that, quote unquote. Like students immediately relate to me, but
Yeah.
the thing is not why am I doing it? What's so special about me? Is why do all the other bastards teaching don't do that? Because that seemed like the most simple, just human thing to do there is. The fact that that's rare, that's not saying something good about me, saying something really bad about everyone else.
Yeah, yeah.
I just feel bad because I was brought up in an area where, like, the teachers, they just all were so beat down by the time you got to them.
Yep.
Like, no one had any passion for what they were doing. It was a job to them. It was a factory job. I worked factories for a long time, and you were the next batch.
Yep.
That they just had to keep pushing through. And I had one good teacher who I still remember his. But again, even the good teacher, like my best teacher, offered me money to sleep with his wife after I graduated. so,
did you?
Like, as long as you're charismatic and grab the kids' attention in the beginning, that's all good. But
well, that's a way to grab your attention. Definitely.
No shit.
Yeah.
I'll give you $100 to sleep with my wife. Like, no. I'm like, first off, I wanted to be like, that's all you think your wife's worth? and then once I refused that, he goes, I'll give you $50 if you film us. And I go, all right, that sounds even worse.
Wow.
You want to be an actor or director? What do you want to do?
I was like, I'm going to abstain from this and later find my voice in comedy.
Wow.
So as a teacher, what do you think, like, if you had the ability, because clearly there's been, the school system in this country has some issues.
They'll fuck you around.
Yeah. Aside from, early art films, there's school lunch programs that are bad, Keith. It's not just all about you getting paid to do. That was opportunity knocking, and you, my friend,
I passed up on
door.
it, really. When I look back at it, I was young. I was confused.
Yeah. So aside from Keith's sad story of giving up on that possibility, what would you change if you had the ability to change the school system or some aspect of it? What would you change?
Well, here is the problem. It's not just one component that if you change that, everything will be better.
Yeah.
It's really the people. It's if you put the exact same structure as there is today in the hands of better quality human beings, the quality of the whole thing would be better without changing one thing about anything else. Vice versa, if you were to make some awesome improvement to the curriculum and the way the university is structured and everything, and it's in the hands of the same people who look the way they do today, it would still be crap. Because unfortunately, structural changes don't mean much until they are in the hands of a person, and it's the quality of that person that make all the difference.
Yeah. And you could have been describing like most businesses, the government, like a lot of old systems in this country and probably other places in the world.
It is, man. That's what it really is about. Is who's, to me, gets even to the point where the same words spoken by different people mean very different things to me.
Yeah.
Just because there's a vibe behind it, there's a credibility behind it, there's an energy behind it that's more than just those words. So, it's something like words, which is technically when we communicate, that's what it's supposed to be all about, right? The content of the message. If there's more to the content than just the content, then you can imagine that when you're talking about structure of education, Yeah, structure unfortunately is a very small portion of the whole thing. But I mean, if we really, really want to get technical in that regard, one thing that I would make a bigger deal is student feedback. Is give students what they want. You know, if both in terms of the quality of teachers that they want, the kind of curriculum that they want, have a stronger feedback. Whereas as it currently stands, students are passive recipients of a curriculum that's thrown at them, whether they like it or not, and they just have to endure through it.
Yeah, yeah. Make it more of a like a biological machine rather than just a rigid machine that
Well,
can't be
yeah, right.
changed. You have to have feedback. You have to have senses. You know,
Yeah.
like
Right
if you-
now, it seems like that they just want us to. They're setting us up to be in the workforce. That's all
what it is.
school is right
Yeah,
now.
that's what it is. I mean, when you look at how many people teach that students that are absolutely hated by students, that's, of course, there's always going to be the one guy who hates even the best teacher, right? But that's not the point. Is when the average of the majority of people taking your class hate your guts,
yeah,
you really don't belong in the classroom. You shouldn't be there. And the reality is that student feedback mean nothing. Some of the most horrible teachers are kept over and over and over forever because it's not about whether students get something out of them or not. It's not about whether they dig them or not. That's not even a priority on the radar for the way schools are set up.
It's about tenure.
Yeah.
yeah.
And even that, yeah, getting it has nothing to do with the quality of your teaching.
So, how important do you think like a college degree is?
Well,
Not
I mean,
to like shoot yourself, because I mean,
it's so inflated that it's tricky because on one level there are so many jobs that you can't even begin to compete without a college degree.
yeah,
At the same level, you have the fact that it costs a shitload of money by the time you add the living expenses and tuition and things and the other. And just because you have a degree doesn't really mean much in terms of what doors are going to open. It's like buying a lottery ticket. If you don't buy it, you're probably not going to win. But just because you buy it doesn't mean your odds are particularly good either. And in the meantime, you are insanely in debt.
Yeah.
So it's
Plus,
kind
a
of
college degree doesn't give you common sense.
yeah, absolutely. I mean
Yeah.
it's a fun experience, but that's definitely
I know a lot of people that wasted their experience in college and still have no common sense.
yeah, of
But
course.
they're like, I was, head of my class, and I'm like, you don't even work in the field that you went to school for.
Right.
yeah. I work with a lot of bachelor degrees and master's degrees, and it's just I sell electronics, but I work at like an overhyped grocery store basically. So it's like I don't know. I was going to go to art college and it didn't work out. Ended up trying to go to a junior college and dropped out pretty early, like not even a semester in. And so, but what my path is. They don't have classes for necessarily.
Right.
I've gotten more out of teaching myself and learning the things that I want to learn. I love learning. I don't
Right.
like school. So it's
Yeah.
like, the system that was in place wasn't really tuned to me. But how things are going with the internet, podcasting, iTunes. I know iTunes has like iTunes U, like a university thing. Like, where do you see yourself ever doing like online schooling or teaching or something to that?
Yeah, I mean, online school is a very different relationship because to me, a big element of fun
Yeah.
in teaching is the looking at each other, being in the same room again, because it's about energy, and it's something that you really can get through a set of notes posted on the net.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that opens some possibilities. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or
Yeah.
there's no potential in it. I think there's a lot of cool stuff, but it shouldn't replace the human element of just when you actually are in the same room and talk to each other face to face. It's something entirely different. It's cool. It's in its own way is a good thing, the online aspect, but is a separate kind of game.
What I'm actually saying in kind of a roundabout way is, if you did that, I would take your class, and that would be like the only way I could take a class. So
Right.
It's more of a wishful
I will
planting
say this,
a seed.
Though, I've learned a lot of stuff that I know now just because I've looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever had the video on YouTube or whatever, in whatever I was looking up, if you had passion in that video of
Right.
what you wanted to teach anyway, I wanted to learn it.
Of course, absolutely.
So I mean, I think it translates online too, as opposed to just in person.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the online thing is great that you can reach an audience that you can never reach in person. You can reach way more people than you could ever. So, I mean, I like it. I'm actually thinking of doing a bunch of people have been asking me about Taoism. What books do I recommend about Taoism? And the reality is that there are several good books. There's not one that I'm crazy about where I'm like, this is it. Read this and it's awesome. So I was thinking of I was thinking, oh shit, I should write a book, but then I don't really have the time for it right now. So I was like, you know what, maybe I'll do a series of lectures. Just do kind of an audiobook, but not even as I don't write it first. I'll just lecture on about a whole bunch of things about Taoism, and at least when people ask me, I'll have something that I stand behind 100%. So I'm thinking of doing that and, just releasing it on iTunes and see how that goes and, play with more in the future eventually.
You should call that the Sober Taoist.
The Sober Taoist.
Yeah, because I will, let me know, because I will definitely subscribe or purchase or whatever, however that comes out. Like, that would be awesome. So, as a parent, your father, what, like, for your kid, what are your education plans? Like, are you gonna go like private school, public school? Like, I mean, I know it's a personal question and you don't have to answer it, but like, I'd be curious as a teacher yourself, knowing how the system is, and then also having a child coming into the system.
Well, the thing is, I actually don't know how the system is because I did high school, everything up to high school in Italy.
Yeah.
So the only stuff that I know about in US is called, junior college, 4-year university, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But all the stuff before, I don't really know it. The whole public-private thing is almost weird to me because, where I come from, there are no private schools. Or rather, private schools exist, but they are only for people who are failing miserably in public school. And so you pay money for essentially people who push you through the grades. That's the only private school that I'm familiar with from Italy. I understand it is a completely different thing out here.
Yeah, it's like almost opposite out
here. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't quite get it. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking I'll take a look at what's around here. If it's, crazy ghetto shit and another place look better, well, let's see. Let's talk about that. If the public school is good, then, I'll just kind of take a look and see case by case. Because, of course, depending on where you are, the quality of public school clearly changes tremendously.
Absolutely,
and, so that's kind of what I mean.
Wait, were they vicious in like grade school and junior high to any other kid who showed weakness in Italy?
Of course.
Oh, okay, then it's the exact same thing here.
Yeah, of course.
The social
however
aspect.
It was there, it's the exact same thing here.
Yeah, well, socially, yeah, but education-wise and teacher.
Education-wise, I mean, Italy sucked just as bad as far as the fun aspect. It really wasn't fun. I hated school.
Yeah.
But in terms of knowing something when you get out, it doesn't mean you know something good. But in terms of knowing what you're supposed to study, yeah, you really know it. I mean, when I started college here, I was like, really? This is college? Give me a fucking break. This is easy. I can do this and largely because Italian school torture you so bad in terms of they can really fuck up your life quite a bit. Like if you're not doing well in your classes, they would have this thing where they give you basically the entire summer to study, where you don't get time to be on vacation and do your shit, and you have to take all the exams at the end of summer. If you don't pass them, you have to repeat the year, and you run the risk of staying in school till you're like 20 or something, and it's like... So there's a major pressure to do well in school. Now,
We have that here too.
Not
how is that fucking possible? I look at my students and even some super nice, really smart people, and I look at the papers I get, and people can barely speak English. And if I notice
played
their
sports.
English sucks,
no.
yeah,
Getting through
They played
public
sports
school
in high school.
Yeah.
well, that's kind of fun.
Getting through high school is easy as fuck. Like I
Right.
didn't, like English, I didn't read. I think I maybe read one book, but I got good grades in English. Like I paid attention. You can do a lot of other stuff and not have to do any of the work.
Right.
So there's huge loopholes you can jump through. At least my experience in school, and plus they didn't make it very fun. But but I've heard that I've grew up with a Korean dude, and Asian culture, they're super, there was a few Asian people in my high school, and they were all like top of their class. Like there's a huge people from outside of the country, first or second generation in the US tend to be way different mentality when it comes to education or just excelling in whatever it is.
Everything.
Yeah. That they have.
They're way more dedicated.
They're not as lazy.
One thing that's funny too is that because the pressure for getting good grades is so much higher, because otherwise your life gets fucked up.
Yeah.
One thing that I notice is that almost universally, everybody from other country cheat like hell. Any which way you can cheat to get the grade, you do it. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of American kids would see it as but you're not supposed to. That's a bad thing. And I was like, how the hell did they brainwash you that way? Really?
I cheated my way through high school. I must be European.
Yeah.
Evidently, because I cheated. I feel it's bad to say this. I know a lot of people who have college degrees who I feel like I'm way smarter than you, but I never went to the schooling you did, but way smarter, I guess, on a common sense or
in
just
real life situations.
You.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said for that, because that's
But I think that's life experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, life experience to some degree, and who you are, maybe either innately or because whatever, how you responded to life experience, because experience, a bunch of people can have experiences, but how they come out of it varies tremendously.
Yeah, like we talked about on the last podcast, we talked about the knowledge, being able to survive when you're poor, just knowing how to live your day-to-day life without any money is a very good skill to have, because if you really want to follow your dreams or do something, really go for something, chances are you're going to be poor as hell for the first few years,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, some people don't ever have to learn that lesson.
Yeah. And one of my favorite books as a kid was this book by Abby Hoffman entitled Steal This Book. And the whole thing was how to live for free, both legally and illegally, all kind of ways in which you can depend on money as little as possible. Yeah. Now, his techniques mostly don't work now, because a lot of his stuff was, work in the 60s, not anymore. But the ideas behind it were really cool. And, with some adaptation, you can, and it really gets you thinking creatively. It's like, okay, I want to do all this stuff, but I have no money for it. How am I'm gonna manage to do it? You need to be smart to figure it out. And, but there are ways.
Yeah, you have to be resourceful.
We're figuring out a way to get us to actually meet in person. Ray and I have never actually met.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I do this podcast, and I just started another podcast, and I've never met that guy either.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So we've been doing a podcast, and we've known each other all through podcasts for over a year, but we've never actually met.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I live in Ohio. He lives in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A civilized place.
Yeah. So, do you have any siblings? No, only child. Me too. How does everybody, do you share? I don't know. That's always seems to be thrown in my face in certain situations, and I don't know why. I don't know any different.
Yeah, I think he's it's one of those glass half full, glass half empty kind of things.
Yeah.
Because of course there are certain things that when you are on your own, that are much better, and others that are much worse. It give you a lot more time to be more introspective, to do stuff. At the same time, you have less time to play in a way that's not just in your head, but is like with other human beings and interact on a more regular basis. So, I mean, it does affect people differently, clearly, because you have. But for me, yeah, I like the whole sharing thing. Yeah, I didn't really see it as an issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I find myself like I think a lot. I really like just growing up the way I did. Like I have no problems being alone for extended periods of time, like in my head all the time, zoned out. And I think that's just mostly because of just the fact that that's what I grew up doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
when you're an only child, sometimes you really just entertain yourself by it looks like you're not doing anything because you're just staring at the waves and you're imagining like so much damn stuff because you're in your head so much of the time.
yeah,
You mean like when every woman tells you, like, what are you thinking about? And you're like, nothing.
It's
Really?
like,
Nothing and everything at the same time.
no, I'm like, where do I start?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
For
like-
me, it's like I have a huge list, and it's going through like I can read way faster in my head than I can in real life. And
Right.
I'm
Like right
flowing
then,
through
I was
ideas.
in the middle of Middle Earth, following that Hobbit movie I watched earlier on mushrooms, and that's where my brain was.
Yeah. So how prepared were you to be a dad? Because I don't have any kids. Keith is scared of kids.
I don't think you're ever prepared
Oh,
in
for
a
sure.
sense because it's nothing that anybody can tell you can prepare you really.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where you just jump in, and of course you need to be not irresponsible about it. You need to have the time, the energy. You need to have some kind of a setup for it. You need to have clearly you need to have some sort of a plan, but a very flexible plan, because the reality of what it means is something that nobody really can communicate to you. And especially the beginning, the first couple of years, that's like a whole other universe where you don't sleep much, you don't do any of the shit you're used to. You spend time where it's not that you have to give attention to a kid. It's like, if you want to train to be a parent, it's like go home, spend 8 hours staring at the table without ever flinching, and then you got, a good start. Because the reality is that you have this single-minded attention sometimes that's kind of freaky, because you can't take time off when they are little. It's not that you can say, well, entertain yourself for like 5 minutes while I do dishes or something. That just doesn't exist. So it's intense, tell you that much. It's really freaking intense. It's awesome, but it's I can see why some people flip when if they are not patient, if they are not, it definitely increases the stress level in a good way, in a happy, ecstatic way, but the stress level definitely goes off the roof.
Yeah, but you've had MMA training, so it's like that has to prepare you for some sort of like stress management, right?
Yeah,
in a way.
Sure.
I mean, it's completely different. It's not like you're worried your daughter, right? You have a girl.
Yeah.
It's not like you're worried your daughter's gonna all instantly become Ronda Rousey and rip your arm off.
Right.
So but you have MMA experience, and you've actually had fights. So that has to be in some way prepared you. Kind of, I would assume. I don't know. I've never done MMA, and I don't have a kid, so I'm like completely speaking out of my ass and making.
You don't have to know how to
assumptions.
choke a kid out.
You don't, but knowing how to deal with stress, like high levels of stress, like I can only think of like the two things that would probably scare the shit out of me the most was finding out I have a kid, or just being in a ring with another trained killer. Not that I'm a trained killer, so that'd probably stress me out even more.
It would be way easier for me to jump in. I would jump in the ring with
Matt Brown,
Cain Velasquez before I would just jump in the ring to have a kid.
Well, that's true, but sometimes you don't have a choice.
Because I know the outcome of one of them is going to be I just get knocked out.
Yeah, but what
The
about with
outcome of the
Cain
other
Velasquez?
is you never know.
Yeah.
So you're never prepared.
No, you aren't. And that's the reality of it. That's why you have to decide you want to do it or you don't. Because there really is a 50-50. If you just start doing the plus and minuses of the game, it's a 50-50 thing. You have to decide whether the minuses are totally worth it because you're so passionate about the pluses or not. But the reality of it is that, yes, it is awesome and it is insanely stressful at the same time.
And it's just unfortunate that most people don't adhere to that same plan. Is why we have so many dumb fucking people.
Right.
It's because stupid people breed at an insane amount. Like the movie Idiocracy.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is, it should have won the Academy Award for Best Documentary of the Year, because to me,
I swear.
It's not fiction, it's exactly how it is.
Yeah, you definitely see the biggest families sometimes tend to be the most stressful to deal with.
Well, I mean, the thing is, a lot of people who are smart, because they are smart, they start asking themselves questions about, shit, do I really have what it takes about this? I don't want to fuck up this kid. I want to be good to them. I want to make sure I have this. Can I handle it? Blah, 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 blah. You ask all these questions, which means that a good chunk of the people who ask themselves these questions are not going to go through it. Yeah. Or they will have one and call it a day. A lot of people are not going to ask themselves a question. They're just going to pop out a bunch of babies without really having any sense of a plan and kind of just going with it. Now, it doesn't mean the opposite is also true. You have people who ask themselves the question, they find good answers, they have a bunch of kids, and they have an awesome life, and they are good parents. So, it's not to say that a bunch of kids equal that, but certainly percentage-wise, generally among the people who don't ask themselves any of the questions that you should, inevitably they're going to have, on average, you're going to have more of those having more kids than the other way around.
Yeah. So where do you see the evolution of humanity going?
I think it's going in the direction where it always was supposed to go, which is they will all bow to me and worship me day and night. And I think this will bring mass enlightenment to the entire universe.
You know what? I had a feeling you were going to say that. When a man comes out with a book entitled Create Your Own Religion, that can only mean that he has found the best one, and he's applying it without us even knowing.
You know what? Yeah, I should have called it, don't fucking create your own religion. I created my own, follow me, because my religion is definitely cooler than yours. So don't even bother.
That's as someone who was raised Catholic, and I went through all the Catholic school, did the altar boy shit forever. Mm-hmm. I'm going to follow you instead of the shit that I learned. Because I've heard you talk a few times, and it seems way more, I don't know, realistic than any of the shit that I learned at 8 years of Catholic school.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about following anything, is the whole idea of create your own, to me, is what any sane human beings should do. It's what you do in any field, right? You study the field, but then you see what works, what doesn't. You reject the stuff that makes no sense and doesn't seem to work. You take the stuff that makes sense and you add some of your own answers to it. And in the process of mixing and matches, and especially adding your own element, you create something that's uniquely yours. It's the same thing with martial arts. It's the same thing with religion. It's the same thing with anything.
It's the same thing with creating yourself as a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
You don't define yourself to one thing. So do you think there will ever be a time without religion?
No. I think the only scenario in which that happens is if human beings figure out a way to live forever and figure out a way to find meaning in their lives once the idea of death is gone. Because those are really the things that drive religion. Fear of death is one of the primary things, because the reality is we don't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. If you remove the fear of that, maybe people say, well, I don't really need to have all the answers. I'm having a perfectly fine time being alive, and I'm not going to have to find out anything otherwise because I'm never going to die. So in that scenario, I can see how maybe certain religions, the passion for religion would diminish. Other than that, no, I don't see it, because there's too much insecurity and fear surrounding our condition. Human conditions is very tricky. We don't know anything about whether anything we do has any meaning or not? Is there any morality in the universe? What the fuck happens after I die? All of those things we have rationality give us nothing to go on, and that's kind of a scary prospect.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think what's the scariest part for me is that most religions stop you from asking questions.
yeah, and that's
Because
why
they have
to
all the
me,
answers.
and that's to me is sort of the litmus test of when somebody's a fraud, is when they don't encourage you to question anything that anybody say, including what they say. Because if they were secure in their convictions and they believe that their ideas are really that good, they would not be scared of questions.
So is there any religion that you know of that it does encourage that?
Jews.
Even
Jews
with,
still question that Jews still argue about the Torah. Like that's a constant thing. They always want to argue, like, and
Yeah,
it's
but like
encouraged.
for like a day-to-day Jewish person, like do they?
Yes, they very much. From what I've gathered, they appreciate the argument of the interpretations of the Torah.
yeah, I mean, my thing is a lot of it depends on who you are talking to, because
Yeah.
there are some insanely dogmatic religious traditions that some human beings manage to be super open-minded and questioning things despite being within a dogmatic tradition. You have traditions that are set up to be very open-minded, and some people take them super dogmatically. So the specific religion give you a push in one direction or another, but ultimately depends on who's picking it up, whether it's gonna go in which direction it's gonna go. I was talking with, I had a really cool podcast a few weeks ago where they had me on with a Catholic priest and a Protestant pastor.
Nice.
And we got along perfectly,
Yeah.
and I think in particular, I remember the Catholic priest had an attitude that was so insanely open-minded. And so my thing was, hell, if Catholicism is your Catholicism, I have nothing against it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because if this is the problem is in 90% of cases I'm going to run into is going to look nothing like his interpretation of it. Now, is his interpretation the correct one or not? I don't give a fuck. It's a better one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Whether it's correct or not, A, I don't care. B, I don't think anybody can find out anyway because you have to dig so many thousands of years into the past. But, it really, and that's an example, Catholic tradition that I'm not particularly fond of.
Now,
You get people
was he a
who,
younger Catholic priest?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, but I don't believe so.
Like the thing that I've run into is any of the younger people who adhere to Catholicism seem to be a lot more open-minded, as in like my grandpa, my grandma, like their age group, like anyone in their 70s seems to be the people who are very strict, hardline, like
Right.
adhere to the old school shit.
Well, I mean, I think that's just how it is. There's always the generation gap that it's more extreme. When you're young and you're dealing with somebody who's really old, you are going to have issues where you really come from different worlds and you don't really understand each other about a lot of stuff. I think it's kind of the nature of the game in every generation.
Yeah. Like yeah. There's like studies and polls and all kinds of numbers everywhere about like weed and same-sex marriage that like today's generations, like 20s 30s, they're totally have different views than the older generation, and it's in a transition basically, especially like a lot of social issues and stuff like that. But what do you think about like is there an evolution, like as people have different viewpoints on their religion, like Catholicism or Judaism or whatever? Is there like an evolution in certain religions happening, like in newer religions like Scientology?
Of course, I mean things are always changing, right? That's why the whole idea that people follow a religion in my mind is bullshit. Because even when they say they follow a religion, the reality is that they are making up their own thing as they go by highlighting some aspects of their tradition, suppressing others. They shape it to a way that fits their personality, their agenda, their culture. And nothing wrong with that if you're honest about it and you admit to it. Like, for example, in most Western religions, there was really no emphasis on environmental responsibility, and if anything, had a fairly predatory view of the relationship with the environment. Nowadays, you have a bunch of people, even within Christianity or so on, who tend to try to make room in Christian theology for a pro-environmental approach. That's a classic example of making up your own thing. Now, I love it because the result is a good thing, it's trying to include something that's very necessary and a healthy step to take.
Yeah.
But clearly that's something that nobody was doing 100 years ago or 500 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, different priorities.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So what do you think of, like, Scientology?
The little I've seen was just so weird that didn't really make me want to look much deeper into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've taken a look, sniffed around, decided I didn't like it, and I was done with it. You have only so much time and energy to decide what you want to dedicate yourself to studying and finding out more about. So once I got an initial impression that I wasn't thrilled with, I decided I've seen enough, thanks. And, maybe it's a mistake, but I don't think so. But ultimately, that's how you make choices, right? Now you eventually decide what to follow more in depth and study and what you don't have time for.
Yeah. It's you dipped your toe in, and it's like, that feels like shit. I have to get out of that.
Basically.
So are there any other, like, I don't know of any new religions, like, are there any new religions sprouting up besides Scientology?
I mean, depending what you define as new, like, for example,
or just different morphs of other religions.
The Baha'i are 150, 100, whatever, from the 1800s in Iran, and they do reflect the context in which they were born, which is more global, better ideas regarding the rights of women, better attitudes about dialogue with other religions and stuff like that. It's really in many ways a reflection of the times.
Yeah.
Didn't Alex Gray start his own religion?
No idea.
Well, what
Alex
about
Gray, the artist? I actually heard this on. He did start his own religion and has tax exemption.
Nice. That's
so he must have been following your book.
So how soon do you think, like, Apple fanboys will start their religion, Death Squad fans will start their religion, simulation theory, like maybe scientific definitions for what might be happening? Like, do you think there's going to be new religions based on, like, kind of like popular trends and beliefs?
I think, though, it's the healthy thing to do would be not so much starting the new religion where everybody then has to follow and it spreads but like starting, it's like mixed martial art. It's not necessarily a new style of martial art. It's a lab that allows anybody to experiment with all martial arts to come up with their own peculiar approach to fighting.
Yeah.
That to me is the same thing with religion. There are lots of tools at your disposal, and individuals could and should be free to pick them, choose them, mix them in a way that makes sense to them. Ultimately, the big themes are always the same, whether you're talking about attitudes toward sex, attitudes toward the earth, gender roles, ideas about the afterlife. All of these are things that anybody who's alive should have their own answers to. What do you feel about this thing? Because, these are the things that you're going to run into whether you want it or not. Everyone who's alive is going to run into these dynamics at some point. So you might as well discover your own answers rather than going by kind of second-hand borrowed knowledge.
Yeah. And you yourself, you're a Taoist, right? And
but again, Taoist, because one of the reasons I like Taoism is because unlike everything else, doesn't really require you to be one thing.
Yeah.
So I can read something that is not technically Taoist and it reflects the same insight. So to me, Taoist is kind of like that identity that really doesn't have an identity in a sense.
It's like
normal identities, they have a code, a fixed series of beliefs, certain dogmas and so on. philosophical Taoism is kind of just the language of life. It leaves you free to do whatever you want with it. And if I read Thomas Paine clearly never heard a word about Taoism, but when you read the stuff he talks about, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. It's like I'm uneducated with it, but I guess my prejudice view of it, or whatever, my idea of what little I've experienced is that it's kind of more finding a balance and understanding that there's two sides to every coin. It's like, it seems like instead of laying out specific bullet points on things that you need to do and not do, it's more of finding a good balance and flow with how you live your life.
Because Taoism is about, in a way, is more like the way the universe works. It doesn't depend on belief. Whether you believe in it or not doesn't really matter. Doesn't ask you to have faith in anything. It's kind of like having faith in gravity. Law of gravity works whether you believe in it or not. That's just where it's at.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Religion is like, I'm always like, it doesn't scare me. Like hearing a lot of other religions, especially the ones that aren't like Catholicism or Christianity, they're the ones that are like embedded so deeply in the United States. Like those kind of scare me. Like the way people, and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, like those are kind of very aggressive religions. I would kind of describe, where there's a lot of other religions that seem to be more passive, and that's probably one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of a lot of organized religions, just because they seem to be too aggressive. They have like their marketing scheme built into their religion. Like, you must spread the word of God.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's tricky, is that the ones that are most successful are precisely the ones that are precisely the ones that are most aggressive. Because when you look at which ones are the most successful in terms of numbers, they are also the ones that have the longest series of wars tied to their history. Because it really boils down to, a lot of conversions are not the result of people knocking on your door and telling you their story. A lot of conversions are the result of forced conversions, of winning wars.
He's back. Don't worry.
Sorry, I forgot to plug something in.
But continue.
Sorry. So anyway, did you watch the fights last night, Daniele?
I didn't watch it. I just heard the results. I didn't get to see them.
Yeah. How often do you watch the fights?
I almost always end up watching them, but often at a much later date. I often can't really do it at the time. I don't even have TV, to be honest. It's like the only thing I have is like stuff to watch DVDs, but I don't have. I don't pay for cable. I don't get any channel, nor I particularly care to. Yeah. So it's. I usually tend to watch the stuff I want later, either when it comes out on DVD or somebody send me a link or something. I end up watching it in various ways, but yeah, I watch all UFCs eventually. Not so often live.
Yeah. I don't have cable. Yeah, I got rid of cable fucking like probably 6-7 years ago.
Yeah,
I hate.
We're all living without cable.
Commercials fucking suck. They're horrible. Yeah, but there's ways to find stuff live. Like UFC is pretty much the only thing, aside from some podcasts, that I will try to catch live. But everything else is usually after the point. What was the last fight that you what was the last fight that you saw? Did you see the Ronda, or not the Ronda Rousey, but the last? Yeah. Did you watch the last women's fight?
Yeah, and no, I didn't see the last one. The last one I saw was Ronda Rousey.
Okay. What do you think about the new female division in the UFC?
It's awesome. I hope they get more, because clearly, the roster is not that deep. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's great. I thought it was an awesome thing way back, even before Gina Carano, there was like way back in the day, you had fighters like Erika Montoya or something, like very early female MMA. And I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was great. So I'm all for it. And Ronda Rousey is definitely, man, she's talented. She's really good.
Yeah, by talented, I mean fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, and the thing is, the thing with, yeah, it's funny how a lot of really good female fighters are, the Gina Carano thing, the Ronda Rousey thing, a lot of it, there's that mix of they are really skilled, and partially they are promoted because they're really skilled, and partially they are promoted because they are good looking.
Yeah.
And, some people bitch about that, and it's like, oh, the reality is, UFC is a form of entertainment, so you need to put people in the seats, which means you need to you appeal to more than one thing.
Yeah.
Part of it is entertainment, part of it is has to be the hot woman, which of course is going to get opportunities that the other one is not going to. But the point is, the reality is, even if a female fighter is totally ugly looking, if she keeps winning, eventually she's going to get the shot.
Yeah.
It may take longer. Whereas one who's more easier to sell to the media because she looks better or is a good public speaker or something, she's going to get those opportunities sooner. But it's not to say that you don't get them unless you look a certain way.
Yeah. For a business like standpoint, UFC putting some not only talented but attractive women to headline, like to start their new, the division totally makes sense. And, obviously going with Ronda Rousey, like she had steam just going into when she won in Strikeforce. Yep. So like, just riding that wave and taking advantage of it.
I will say this though, that Kat Zingano or whatever
the
her
last
name
one.
Is. Yeah.
Yeah. She's tough.
She's tough and she's a looker too. Just like Misha Tate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, that fight was crazy, man. Elbows, knees, fucking that was a serious fight.
I was blown away. So, I liked the fight. I thought they were both really good. I was kind of bummed when Misha Tate had her in a perfect leg lock position and she had a ton of time to finish her. Mm-hmm. And once she couldn't get the initial heel hook, she had no clue how to transition and switch to a different footlock. And to me, I was like, oh, come on, man. It's like, maybe because I really particularly dig footlocks, but I was like, this is not female MMA, though. Sometimes you do see things that amaze you because you're looking at people who are at such a high level of professionalism. Yeah. They are such awesome fighters. And sometimes you see them make mistakes. They are like, oh, give me a fucking break. Really? You're going to make that mistake? Yeah. That seems like elementary in some ways. And of course, it's easier to do it when you're sitting at home than when you're there.
It's so much easier to do that because I've never trained a day in my life, but I've watched MMA religiously since about 2006. And I've been at local fights where I'm like, why is he turning into the choke? You turn away from the choke. Like, what does he do? Like, and I'm sitting there like I've ever been choked.
Yeah, I'm the best fucking couch MMA fighter ever.
No,
but still, that's what he should have done.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
And the thing is that because MMA, there are so many skills that are required, clearly not everybody is good at everything, even top people. So, Misha Tate, I'm sure she has, and she does have lots of skills. Clearly, leg locks are not one of her top things.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever been in a leg lock position like she was in that was the perfect leg lock position and not be able to finish. Yeah. I was like, really? But, again, she probably is good at so many freaking other things. You can't dedicate that much time and energy to every aspect of the game. Yeah. You're going to have holes. That's just how it is.
And the money's not there yet, so they're not able to train as much as, So it's I like it because it kind of takes you back to almost like watching earlier UFCs. Right. Where a lot of people were kind of specialists, like Chuck Liddell's, Tito Ortiz, like they kind of did a thing. And you're seeing that again, but in female fighters.
But
in a way.
It's not so much because they know the game plan.
But then there's
they
Ronda
train
Rousey.
With the same dudes.
Yeah, there's Ronda Rousey where you can put money on how she's going to finish it in the first round. That's
the
kind
only
of a
thing
specialist.
about Ronda that looks scary is that is the second time in a fight that she gives up her back. because she's doing these hip throws going high on a grip around the woman's neck rather than going a little lower.
Yeah.
And it's the second time that she ends up giving up her back with somebody. It happened in the Misha Tate fight. It happened in this last one.
Yeah.
So taking chances. I mean, she's so awesome that she still isn't at advantage no matter what. But I can see how she can make one mistake too many that way, because the last time she was getting pretty close to getting submitted.
Yeah.
And that was just because she fucked up. She ended up giving up her back. And unless she corrects that, if she keeps doing it, eventually somebody's going to choke her out.
Yeah. So when did you get into MMA? Like watching, did you start training and then that led you into watching it?
No, I started watching it really at the beginning. I think like my first UFC was like UFC 2 or something, or 3.
Yeah.
It was like way back. It was UFC 3. It was I remember the one. I think the first fight I ever saw was Royce Gracie against Chemo, which was UFC 3.
Well, that was the one he couldn't like finish, right?
He ripped his ponytail out.
Right. He eventually finished him, but he was so tired that he couldn't continue to the next part of the tournament.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and so I started watching it way early on, but then, I was doing martial arts, but I wasn't training MMA. Well, nobody was really at that time, for that matter, but I didn't really start doing a more mixed game until, I don't know, 2000, 2001, something like that.
So were you in like a martial art?
Yeah.
Okay. What were you doing? What did you start out doing?
I started out, originally I started out with a bunch of Chinese martial art, and I slowly made my way from the more flowery Chinese martial art to the more self-defense based. And then I started kind of switching out of that and jumping more into combat sports. One of the best things I've done, one of the skills that has helped me the most was to wrestle some. Old-fashioned wrestling, which I never thought much of, turned out to be insanely effective for me. I like jiu-jitsu. I started boxing, so I started playing more with... I like judo a lot, but I never had the chance to... I mean, I trained for a while, for maybe a year or so, but I haven't spent enough time doing it to get really good at it. And I think I like combat sports because there's an honesty about it. There's... You find out quickly whether those techniques work or not for you. Yeah. In a lot of cooperative martial arts, which are the more self-defense based one, because the nature of the business is you can train full power, full force, eye gouges, knee to the groin and stuff like that. That means you train cooperatively, which means you never fully know whether that would work against a guy who's uncooperative.
Yeah, it's in theory training.
Yeah, because, self-defense arts have the advantage that the techniques you use are exactly the ones you would want to use in a fight. Whereas
that's why I don't like the whole blow to the back of the head rule.
Yeah, but it's
because
a sport.
They keep turning. Even in the sport, like in mid punch, if you can turn the back of your head.
Yeah, but they don't call
to make a legal
lot of
punch an illegal punch. Like I just don't, unless it's directed towards the back of the head.
Yeah,
right.
I think people should quit bitching about it.
Yeah, I don't think they don't call that much.
But they do.
Well, there was the last one with what was the heavyweight match where he the last two elbows,
Gonzaga.
But they didn't call it. The people complain, but people complain about anything. But
and that's
I don't think it's too bad.
Right. Sports are the baddest thing about sports is that clearly all the techniques that are most effective are not allowed.
Yeah.
But the ones that are left, you can train full power, full speed in a way that you find out whether against a resisting opponent with adrenaline, whether those work or not.
Yeah.
But of course, that means all the more effective techniques you need to get rid of because otherwise you kill each other. And it's not
just
a sport
like
anymore.
The north-south techniques and everything, where if you could throw knees on the ground.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, and then striking to the back. It's like a lot of those are kind of to avoid possible serious damage.
But the downward elbows and everything else.
Some of those are some of those are horrible. But
when you think about the fighting game, if you were to allow strike to the groins, pretty much the entire game would be different.
I'll bite your dick off if we're in a fight to death. Like,
No, but I
I'm
mean,
not-
even
well,
in
do
terms
that
of
for
technique, how people stand, how they kick, how they move.
Yeah.
If they knew that the groin was a legitimate target, clearly they couldn't. The whole sport of MMA would be completely different.
Well, there was that early UFC where the dude won by punching the other
Grabbing
dude in the
nuts.
groin. You know,
Yep.
so
Yep.
it was there for a second. And you're
I'll
like,
submit to
I
that.
don't even want to watch that. That
I'll-
hurts
I'll
me.
tap out.
Right.
Yeah. It's like there's a reason why I don't watch like skateboarding accident videos because I know there's going to be a majority of those with groin strikes. And I just,
Compound fractures
that
or
too.
groin
Oh,
hits.
God damn.
There was one where this guy, key technique, started just hitting in the balls over and over and over again. This guy, Joson, even to the point of moving the cap out of the way to be able to hit him better. And
It's like
but-
passing the guard.
Right, but if anybody ever deserve it, I mean, Joson was
Isn't that
later,
isn't that the guy who's in prison now?
yeah, because of some really brutal, nasty rape story, and
Yes.
yeah,
I'm glad that guy got punched in the dick.
yeah.
That's true. Well, it didn't stop him, so clearly that's not going to be a method to keep rapists off the street.
Right.
So what's your... Go ahead, Keith.
Dick punching is evidently not the method to keep rapists off the street.
Yeah.
Might breed
it's-
them.
Yeah, right, but it's satisfying.
Maybe that kick-started him. It's like, wow, I kind of dig that. So what's your... Like, do you have a favorite fight? Like, do you have, like, a fight that sticks out in your head?
A
Or-
lot of the clearly the quality of MMA has gone up
Yeah.
lately, but to me, some of the older stuff is more meaty quality. When I look at the guys like Sakuraba, so many of his fights were so insanely exciting. They
I
were,
love the pride fights.
yeah, there was an element of entertainment to it that's not always there with modern MMA. Now, in modern MMA, again, there are some. I mean, anytime you watch Anderson Silva fight, it's art, right? I mean, it's so amazing, it's art.
Yeah.
But I noticed there are fewer and fewer fighters that I care about, that I'm invested on. I watch a lot of fights without really caring who's gonna win now. That never used to be the way it was before. I always had people that I was deeply passionate about them winning or not. I find that the quality of athletes today is way higher.
Yeah.
The personality, charisma, entertainment factor of it all has gone down big time.
The Shale Sunnins are very few and far between right now.
Yeah.
And he
yeah,
is really
yeah.
good at being Chael Sonnen.
Yeah, yeah.
He's he made his name off of losing.
Yeah.
Well, he's the best Tito Ortiz ever wished he could be.
Right.
Tito
Right.
can't talk.
Yeah.
And even Tito, too, there's something interesting. Like guys like Ortiz, he played that same game, bad boy, I talk shit, people
Yeah.
are gonna pay to see me get beat up kind of thing. But then you read, Tito's book, his biography and stuff. He had
Oh,
a
yeah.
really wild, crazy life.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
way more interesting of a person that he leads people to believe. And in the end, it becomes kind of a sympathetic character in some weird, odd way.
Oh yeah, when he was a coach, the first time he was a coach on The Ultimate Fighter, that's
I
when
loved him.
Yeah, that's
He
when
made me
everybody
love him.
he changed everybody's mind. They're like, "Oh my god, he's like such a sweetheart."
Yeah.
And yeah, but then
But now he's back to a dick in my mind.
yeah, I mean, Tito he's the old generation of MMA fighter who,
Mhm.
that he couldn't exist to now. It won't work. And plus he's super beat up. But
Right.
At least he's not punch drunk
Right.
Well, hopefully.
like Chuck.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. I'm
yeah,
sorry, and I don't.
that's true.
I hate to sound, but yeah, Chuck, when he was on the last Joe Rogan podcast,
yeah.
Chuck sounded
wasn't it
like
2
I
a.m.
do on
too?
most of our podcasts, but that's because I've drank about a 12-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, that was like 2 a.m. and so
Yeah.
Still, like
I'm thinking that he was with you right there.
I hope that was my and everyone else's
Yeah.
who listened to that.
It
We
did.
were just like, I hope he's drunk.
Yeah,
Right.
or just, some people just don't speak well. Like, I talk to a lot of people every day, and some people just don't know how to form sentences well. I, at times, are one of those people. Sober.
I've heard a lot of interviews with Chuck.
Yeah. Well,
to where I've got a good something to gauge it off of, and I
Was
just
the
hope,
one
but
the
again, it happens to people. Like you can't get
Sure.
hit in the head that many times and not have it actually affect you.
yeah.
Sure, of course.
And
Was
he
the
got
one
his lights shut off
with
hard like 4 times.
Shotgun? Right. Was the one with Rogan the one with Enzo Inoue? Was there?
Yes.
Was that the one?
Yes.
Yep.
Man, that's a really interesting guy.
I
Yes.
love
Word, yeah, he was just wow. Listening to him talk about a guy with a story. Good MMA fighter. He was fun to watch, but his stuff, what he says, is even more interesting.
Yeah. I had
about
no
the
idea who he
Yakuza
was.
and everything else.
Oh,
was
yeah.
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was definitely an awesome pod. And that's like some of my most favorite fights to watch are usually guys that I have no fucking idea who they are, and it's usually a good fight because they know nobody knows who the fuck they are, and they're trying to make a name for themselves, so they lay it out a lot more than somebody with a big name will.
Right.
Play it safe, stuff like that. But who are do you have? You said you narrowed down your favorite fighters. Who are your favorite fighters now? Who do you get nervous to watch?
Guys today fighting?
Yeah.
The current ones, I'm not as emotionally invested. I mean, I like Anderson Silva. He's a lot of fun to watch. I dig him. A lot of the other guys I like, but I don't really care if they lose. George St. Pierre seemed like a nice guy, but, I'm not super fond of his style.
Yeah.
John
The
Jones
WrestleFuck
is
style.
really, not, smart. You play it safe. You want to
Yeah.
win. You want to walk home with all your brain cells. I respect
Yeah.
that. But clearly is not as, John Jones is a lot of fun to watch. He's out of the cage persona. Yeah, strange to say the least, but he's inside the cage is awesome. That's for sure. But yeah, a lot of people it's like I like their fights, but I like them, but I don't like how they fight. Like the Frankie Edgar, for example. The guy has so much heart. You can't tell, but I admire him. At the same time, if he could finish one fight once in a while, it would be interesting.
Yeah.
The fact that it always goes to controversial decisions gets old after a while.
Well, he finished Gray
on the
Maynard.
other end, you have a bunch of guys who are really skilled.
Yeah.
Say it again?
Oh, he finished Gray Maynard, but that's like the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, exactly. Now, many of the last fights,
Yeah.
that's...
After a
And,
rematch.
But so, it's tricky. It's like, I don't get as... now I like it more as the technical aspect of it than I get into the characters. I don't know if it's a matter of how they promote them or what has changed, but it seems to be, in terms of personality, the Sakuraba, the Evan Tanner, the Genki Sudo, people who had this personality that was larger than life, that when they get into the cage, what they do in the cage is almost secondary to the aura that carries them into it. I don't really see that often today.
Yeah, well, it got real disappointing when the Pride transfer happened, and very few people that we saw from Pride. Like, how much did you want Crow Cop to just kick everyone's head off?
Yeah.
Like, and it just didn't happen. How much did you? I mean, Rampage had his short time.
Yeah.
Right.
He did real good.
Yeah, he did.
For a minute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then everyone progressed around him. Like,
Right.
I just felt like a lot of the Pride guys, and Anderson Silva, who wasn't huge in Pride,
Right.
who had a couple losses in Pride,
Yeah.
he ends up coming over
Yeah.
and has just ran the gamut. And it's so fun to watch him fight, like you were saying. Like, he's one of my
he's
favorites.
awesome. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that guy. Especially now, like there was a time where it was when they were in Dubai. I forget who he was fighting, but that was like one of the most ridiculous, boring fights I've ever seen.
Talos Latus.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a couple of bad ones. The one you're referring to was with Damian Maya.
Damian Maya,
in
yeah.
Dubai.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so he had a couple of bad ones, but yeah, in general, he's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
He's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it seems like because Dana White gave him a lot of shit, around
Yeah.
that time, and then ever since then he just picked it up, and he's like he's destroying people.
Yeah.
At 205, at 185, like
Yeah.
he doesn't even care. Like the way he handled Forrest
Yeah.
Griffin
No, he's awesome.
Yeah.
was
Mhm.
still my favorite.
Yeah, that's art. That fight right there is a work of art.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see that.
It's ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
you
And
see it in slow mo, and you're
there's
like,
the interview with Forrest where he tells the story, and I love it. You look it up on YouTube or whatever, and Forrest Griffin describes it as, he goes, I kept throwing punches, and it was like the Matrix. He just kept moving out of the way, and it
Yeah.
looked like he said, "You silly, silly white boy,
Forrest is a
what
guy
are you doing trying
that
to
I like.
punch me?"
Forrest is a guy with personality.
yeah,
He's a guy that I want to see do well because his fighting style, he's good, but I don't go crazy for how he fights.
Yeah.
His personality he's a guy that you want to see do well because he's just so fun.
absolutely. When I started watching UFC, that was like, I think one of his early fights was the first one I saw. And I was like, I love this dude. I actually got to see him last summer. I was at the UFC Expo in Vegas, and he did a signing thing. That was when he fought Tito for the last time.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the next day he had a signing thing at some sports memorabilia store at like a adjoining hotel that I was at. So
Right.
I went to go meet him and take pictures with him. And it's like, it's so like he's totally, he's like the dude. He's like the underdog dude that you always root for. He's a really funny guy. His books are hilarious.
Yeah.
He's got a really good sense of humor, and he's just kind of like the down to earth type of dude.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy that, yes, you can't help but like.
Yeah, for sure. But at the
When
same,
he beat Shogun,
oh,
I
that
was
was
so
awesome.
proud for him.
Yeah, that was awesome.
yeah,
Like I loved Shogun because I was a Pride guy. Like
Right.
I thought Shogun was gonna come in. I was like, oh, poor Forrest.
I bet
Right.
on Forrest to win that. Actually,
They just fed him to the lions, and
Yeah,
all of a
they
sudden,
did.
all of a sudden he comes out and Shogun's fat and he's just not ready for the octagon at all.
Yeah.
All those Pride guys made a horrible introduction, except for like Rampage. I think his was pretty decent, but most of those Pride guys just did not have a good showing when they first started.
Yeah, Rampage and Silva, really, those were the top. Those guys did awesome. And some of it, it could be a couple of things. You could have one, by the time you have a big name in Pride, it means that you have been at the top of your game in Pride for a while. So, it's been a while. Maybe by the time the hype precedes you because of your past, but that was already several years of fighting. So by the time they made it into UFC, maybe their prime was past.
Yeah.
That's one option. And the other option is the fact that Pride, because they promoted entertainment, they would set up a lot of these guys against the lower level fighters,
Yeah.
which allowed them a chance to show off their skills, to build the myth surrounding them. And they would really only have even fights against a guy who was as skilled as they are, not that often. Which means clearly the level of competition in that sense is not as consistently difficult as it was in UFC. It was still difficult, don't get me wrong. And I mean,
Yeah.
once you get to the top, they are just as difficult as any other fight. But Pride built their fighters a lot more. UFC, you get thrown to the lions on the first day. There's no easy fight.
Yeah.
In Pride, you would have some really hard fights and some really easy fights. And so it would help build. I really like the Pride model. I think sometimes when you pair people together that they are so skilled, you don't get to see the fun of it because they are sometimes so evenly matched that they nullify each other's strengths. Whereas when you put some guy who's top dog against somebody who's pretty good but nowhere near, that's where you see some crazy techniques. And some of the stuff you see is just out of this world. I mean, it's kind of like what George St. Pierre say when people say, you never finish a guy. It's like, yeah, I'm always fighting like one of the top 3 guys in the world. Yeah, try to finish those guys. If they gave George St. Pierre number 20 in the world, St. Pierre would probably put on show and do these amazing techniques and all of that.
Yeah.
But when you're fighting such a high level of competition all the time, you take less chances.
That's one thing Keith and I have talked about on the show, that it seems like the competition is a lot stronger in that weight division, whereas some of the other weight divisions, that's kind of why you see a lot of the crazy shit, is because there's a little bit more separation between number 2 and number 1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's, you know, maybe, GSP doesn't finish the fights, but he never really gets close to losing. I mean, a head kick here or there, maybe,
near.
but
Yeah.
he has a problem protecting his head.
But I think back to the pride fighting thing that we're talking about, the other thing that separates when those guys came over is pride encouraged steroids.
Right.
They might as well have been just like in the locker room being like, does anyone need juiced up real quick before they go out there? Because, I mean, you know, Bob Sapp's going to go out later and everyone needs to juice up a little bit before Bob gets out there.
Right.
And now they actually test for it over here, and I just don't think that it translated.
Could be. Yeah, the steroid factor also played in. Some of those guys were probably much better than they would have been because they were on steroids. Entirely possible.
But I also don't agree that that's like you still have to be a great athlete.
Yeah,
Anyone
of
can
course.
take steroids.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's more their generation, when they came into the UFC, they were like just at the cusp of where that generation of fighter was. It was rolling into a new generation of like a more well-rounded fighter, where it's not just a Chuck Liddell where you use your wrestling to stand up and punch. It's like you have to be more well-rounded. Whereas, you know, a lot of those fighters were kind of, you know, more one-dimensional. They're not as well-rounded, and also age too.
Sure.
You know?
I mean, definitely. But even that, yeah, you saw Nogueira would submit everybody. In UFC, Nogueira has got, 2 submissions or something? Like, it's a different game. And a lot of it is we are fighting against.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think you get to see the Ronda Rousey putting on a show every time, because there's more difference in skill level in the women division than there is in the men division.
Yeah.
I personally would promote fighters allowing some top-notch fighters to take Rocky kind of fights where you give somebody a chance who probably hasn't fully earned it, and have some fights that are not quite as even, because it's more exciting. There's the underdog element of seeing if the underdog can pull it off, and if they can't, that means the other one is putting on a show and doing some amazing technique that they would never take a chance doing.
Like a Stephen Bonner.
Right. You know,
like a Stephen Bonner, Anderson Silva, but even Stephen,
like Chael Sonnen, John Jones.
I really, you know what? I honestly love to watch John Jones fight, and he's a young fighter and everything. But like you were saying earlier, his outside of the ring persona is so douchey that I just wish by any chance that Chael pulls it off. And I don't even like Chael that much.
No.
Like, I've talked shit about how like he was very disrespectful, like, and I didn't like that part of it.
Yeah.
But I get the showmanship part. Like, I look at it from both angles.
He's the best. Daniela, did you see him on Rogan's podcast? That's where I really changed my opinion on Chael Sonnen.
On Sonnen? No, I didn't hear that one.
It's really good. I mean, I'm sure it seemed like he was being more real rather than promoter Chael.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But at the same time, I'm sure there was still part of that, because it just seems like. But it was kind of like when you saw Tito Ortiz, or when people saw Tito Ortiz as a coach in The Ultimate Fighter. Like, you get to see this different side of him compared to what you normally see in the media. And that's kind of, I totally thought he was, when he had his rematch with Anderson Silva, I put money on him. I was in Vegas for that fight, and I obviously lost, because Anderson Silva is clearly on a different level. But him getting to fight John Jones is definitely a Rocky type situation where he really has no reason to be fighting for a belt in a weight class that he hasn't. I don't think he's fought in that weight class, you know.
Right. So
he used to fight at 205, but that was like he had early fights with he fought Forrest Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
and he lost to him by a triangle, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember actually the fight with Forrest. I remember they did fight. I remember he lost like 7 million times against Jeremy Horn. He had like 3 different fights that he lost to Jeremy Horn. But yeah,
I used to love Jeremy Horn.
Yeah,
he was one
good.
of my favorites in the beginning.
He was really good.
Yeah.
Even though that he lost most of his, it seemed like he lost most of his fights, but his record was still like 100 and something.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fought a ton.
No one else had more fights than Jeremy Horn.
Yeah. He fights a bunch.
So let's change gears. Let's talk about your podcast. How are you enjoying podcasting?
It's awesome. People are really cool. There's this weird feedback with listeners, how people write. Sometimes they're like, they dig things, so they send you money, or like, really, just people voluntarily send you money. Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You have it's so much fun. It's like such a different medium than I could have imagined a few years back. It's fun. I dig it. It's a really cool way of communicating.
And you do, for those that don't know, it's the Drunken Taoist podcast, and you do it with Richimon1 on Twitter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we do 2 episodes a month. One is with a guest, and one is without. So it's just in-house with chatting, and then the other one is we have a different guest each month.
Yeah. And how did you two hook up?
A bunch of people after several times when I was as a guest on Rogan's podcast, on Duncan Trussell podcast, and so on, I started getting a lot of messages saying, hey, you need to start your own, and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, that's sweet, but I really don't have the time and the energy to dedicate to, well, let's start with the basic. I don't have the time and the energy to dedicate to figuring out how the hell to podcast, and record and edit and put on iTunes and all of that. I mean, I hear it's easy, but I really don't have those 3 days to dedicate to figuring it all out.
Yeah.
And so after enough times that I got the message, I replied to somebody saying, hey, if really you guys are that interested, by all means, just if anybody has the skills to take care of the end of the business that I don't want to take care of, which is all the technical aspect, great, And Rich replied, and he was like, yeah, man, I actually live not that far away from where you work. I'm a film editor. I have access to a studio, all of that. So I was like, cool, So we met up, and then same thing with Evan Calver, who helped us with all the web part of it all. Same exact thing. He replied to a message, and he hopped on, and he helped a bunch. So that's how it worked out.
It's awesome. I think it's a good fit. Like, I think you guys were talking on your last episode how he's gotten some hate mail.
I mean, that's the nature of the business, right? Absolutely. It's like you get the same reason why somebody likes you is precisely the same reason why the next guy is going to hate your guts. And, you can take it too personally, just how it rolls.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, like, Red Band has that same problem on the Rogan podcast. Like, a lot of people that don't, or, like, that's their complaint about the Rogan podcast. And I disagree with that as well. I think with Red Band, it's a little bit different because he is definitely an acquired taste. His humor is an acquired taste, but he like, once you understand what he's doing, it's hilarious. And then, your co-host, I think he fits your podcast very well. Compliments, like, with discussions and stuff like that. It keeps the flow going. So I just wanted to bring that up because I totally disagree with all the hate that man gets.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't get it either, but again, it's
people are gonna
the thing about the hate is it's cool to have strong opinions. It's best when you convey them as constructive criticism, as in, too much of this, a little too much of that, you could do more of this other thing. That helps people because you're giving them tools to rethink about it. If it's just you suck, go die, that doesn't really help anybody. If it's just totally destructive, that doesn't really help you to improve or to change.
Yeah, unless you're like you have a profession of drinking through straws. Then, then that would be a good compliment.
Right.
But I don't think there's too many of those people. So one of the segments you have different segments. You interview people. You kind of go on rants, but you talk about dreams. How into dreams are you? Like, are you into like the analyzing of what they
No.
mean?
No way. No.
Okay.
They're
Which is good. I'm not either, but
they're fine while they last,
Yeah.
and makes for good stories.
yeah. Are you into like the lucid dreaming stuff at all?
It's cool. Like when it happened, it was really cool. Like I remember as a kid, I had a ton of nightmares and stuff. And the day when I figured out that I could be conscious in my dream, that was freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a hell of a lot of fun. I dig that part.
Yeah. What kind of do you have? Like, I know I usually have similar dreams. Do you have like dreams of flying a lot? What like do you have kind of like common themes or
I
genres?
dream a lot of killing people with knives.
Nice. Do you have a big knife collection? Should anybody be worried?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, yeah, why not guns? Why not something else? I have no idea. But every so often I have these dreams where it's always there's a good reason. It's never like I wake up and I'm like, oh, what a horrible, fucked up human being I am. There's always a very good reason why somebody need to be knifed. But still, at the end of the day, when you wake up from like, maybe it doesn't happen that often, but like 3 times a year, you wake up from this horrendously gory, bloody dream in which you just kill somebody with a knife.
I'm the asshole that gets knifed in that dream.
Really? Well,
Like
sure.
I am. Like I've got shot. Like I know what it's like to be shot. The burning feeling, and just from dreams.
You know,
Like, I don't know what it's like to be shot for real.
I haven't had one of the knife killing dreams in a while, so show up in one of my dreams. I'll be glad
Yeah.
to execute you.
Yeah.
Oh, but before you do that, you have to make up some story that gives me some moral reasons to kill you. So do something really bad in my dream, and then I'm on. Then pass me the knife, and we're on.
I'm always trying to be like really nice, and then all of a sudden I get shot, and I'm like, oh my god, and no one will help me. Like that's
Yeah.
my dream. My recurring dream is like I'm shot, and I'm like, somebody get me to somebody that knows what to do, and they're like, I don't know what to do.
No, okay, then
You're good.
I take it back. Don't show up in my dream because you fuck up with my. I
Yeah.
couldn't really kill you because I would feel bad, but it would be.
Yeah, I would just
hard.
sit there and suffer for hours. Like that's your dream. Like
I'll have
Yeah.
that dream.
stab
I'll
me, and
take
I'm
that
just
one.
like, ow, why did you stab me? That's
I'll-
really not nice of you.
I would probably enjoy watching that dream.
I feel that you were very unkind with that action right there. I don't know.
Have
It
you-
seems I'm bleeding, and
I used
you
to have
caused this.
I used to have dreams where when I woke up, they were like so realistic and slightly mundane dreams that I would wake up and be confused that dream was a memory.
Right.
Like, oh, I was going to meet this person and like, but it was all in a dream and I haven't really talked to that person in months or something like that. Have you ever had that where you got confused?
Yeah, I mean, there are these dreams that are freaky because you dream of something that then does happen, or
Yeah.
exactly you dream of somebody that you haven't heard from in forever, and suddenly they call the next day or something. That's when you start thinking that maybe there is something, that not all dreams are just pure entertainment, but there's sometimes some deeper, weirder stuff goes through.
Yeah, I definitely
I had a
get-
recurring dream when I was a kid of falling down these steps at my uncle's house.
Hmm.
And my uncle bought the house that my grandparents used to live in, and I told him about this dream, and he goes, "That's funny. I remember you fell down those steps as a kid."
Right. But
So
at
for
least
me-
there is kind of an unconscious memory, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
like,
It's it's something that you do remember, you just don't remember consciously.
Yeah, like a year and a half, I fell down those steps, and
Yeah.
I constantly remembered that and dreamed of it as a kid.
Right. No, but that one is weird, but at least it makes sense because it's just a matter of you don't remember consciously, but it stays with you, right? It's still part of your experience. The really weird ones are stuff are not about the past, they're about the future, and then the future comes through. That's where you go like, whoa,
Yeah.
what the hell was that?
Yeah.
That just
The deja vus, like
Yeah.
we all like, it seemed like it happened a lot as a kid,
Yes.
as to where it doesn't happen now.
Yeah. I don't remember my dreams as much as I did when I was a kid, and I'm sure
No.
there's chemicals and substances that I take that kind of hinder that, but I definitely don't. I remember having those, like, so many deja vus, and I remember as a kid thinking, like, if I could, like, somehow control or learn how to control this, then I can tell the future. Like I'll be able to tap
of
into
course.
that, but it never worked.
That would be fun, though.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the 2 hours, and I wish this could go on forever, and I would love to have you back on the podcast, Daniele, if
Sure,
you ever
of
want
course.
to. But before we go, I want to, as a writer, a teacher, MMA, everything, as a parent, what inspires you? What do you draw inspiration from? I want to leave on a very easy, soft question.
Yeah, seriously, man.
Yeah, sorry.
Get me started. Like, what inspires you? And then it will be easier for me to go rolling.
I mean, for me, my business is called Inspired Disorders, so I try to find inspiration in everything, like literally. Like if I'm watching MMA, I try to break it down to where I can find some aspect of that I can apply to myself or my business. I'm inspired by other artists. I'm inspired by, more so I'm inspired by other people who are creative in fields that I'm not necessarily involved in. So like MMA, directing, writing.
Comedians.
Comedians. Hopefully one day Keith will inspire me in some way.
You motherfucker.
Yeah. You inspire me. Duncan Trussell, like you guys, that's like probably one of the most epic podcast combinations for me is when you were on Duncan's podcast, the multiple times you've been on there. Because you guys, like, the subjects you talk about and the things you're knowledgeable about, you guys are an epic mix. And
it was funny, man. When the first time Matt Staggs, who was this guy was helping me with 50 Things You're Not Supposed to Know About Religion, the book. He was promoting it. Was the publicist. He's Joe Rogan's publicist now.
Yeah,
he's a really cool, nice guy, and he helped me a bunch. And this one time he said, "You really need to go on Duncan Trussell podcast. I can see you guys having this awesome conversation. It will be perfect." I'm like, okay, let me check about Duncan. You know, I heard the name. I don't really know him. You know, so I YouTube something about Duncan, and I picked the wrong clip, I think, because I saw this clip and I was like,
oh, no.
What the fuck, really? This guy?
Was it the drunken history about Tesla?
It could have been that one. I don't remember
Or it
anymore.
was when he was picking up a girl acting like he was a rapist.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell it was, but I remember being just living with the thing like, Matt Staggs is crazy. What the fuck is he talking about? I have nothing in common with this dude.
Yeah.
And he kept insisting. I'm like, fine, you know, I can do a podcast. Doesn't, you know, no biggie. And the second I went and I saw Duncan, like within 2 minutes, I was like, I know exactly what Matt was talking about. He was like, yes, this is an awesome human being. I click with him immediately. And but it was fun. It's like I did not get it through the video. I did get it right away in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to your question about inspiration. I think like I'm fascinated by heroism, and I don't mean hero in the sense of, you know, flexing muscle or doing the crazy, impossible against all odds thing. I mean that too. I dig that as well. To me, heroism though is being having just this insanely high level of human quality when it would be easier not to, which may mean that just being ridiculously patient with a kid who's having a fit and you find a way to twist it around and then the kid is happy and turns sweet, you know. That's not any less heroism than pulling off the Rocky moment. To me, in all of its shape, when you can have an impact on other human beings, where you can bring out the best in them, where every fiber of your being is telling you, fuck, I'm tired, I don't want to deal with this, I want out. You want to just give in to cynicism or being, you know, all the parts that are in all of us that are less than desirable. And instead you find a way to bring out the best in you, which in turn bring out the best in other people. That to me is what interests me the most in whatever field, whether it's a fighter who can do that against the impossible odds, whether it's an artist, whether it is anything, a parent, the field itself to me is an excuse. The thing that interests me is the hero quality. not the specific. The specific is just the language that they decide to put it in, but it's the human quality that's on display that amazes me. That spirit there, that's what excites me the most. That's what inspires me, so to speak.
Well, that is an amazing answer, and thank you for the answer. And I actually have a tattoo on my arm. It says "Rebel with a Mission," which is a lyric from a Chili Pepper song. And I think that's kind of, it's one thing to say no and not no, just to say no, but it's a different thing to kind of realize that the herd that you're running in may be running in the wrong direction, and being able to stop and go against the flow of what most other people are doing. That's where real heroics come in.
You know what? It's weird to think of this, but I think of the Bradley Manning story when you talk about of someone who just said, "Hey, I'm in this, but I also want to expose what's going on." And I feel bad. I feel bad for the kid. I hope that the trial goes well and he doesn't have to die.
Yeah.
And I've never actually been invested in the situation, but what his explanation of what inspires him or a hero, just while he was saying it, made me think of that story.
Yeah. And it's when you're in the situation, which I clearly haven't been in that situation where you're facing those kinds of that kind of opposition, but to know that there's people out there definitely are an inspiration. And I want to thank you, Daniele Bolelli, for coming on the show, because you inspire me.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
I know you inspire a lot of people, and I would love to have you back on. I know you're busy, but
sure.
It's been an awesome podcast, and I just want to thank you, and thank you, Keith, for
thank you.
A lot of
a
lot of thanks going around.
thank everyone.
Yeah,
that I even made it. My mushroom and hobbit adventure earlier.
That was today. He was doing
that. That was like 2 hours before this podcast happened.
Some intense. So, what do you have to promote? Promote your book, Daniele Bolelli, and your website, Creating Your Own Religion. Your new book out. Everybody go buy it.
The new book that I have out is Create Your Own Religion. One of the old ones is On the Warrior's Path, if you're more into martial arts and things like that. That one was more philosophy, martial arts. This is applied to religion, life, the universe, whatever. But yeah, the latest one just came out a month ago, Create Your Own Religion. You guys want to check out the Drunken Taoist podcast? By all means, download away. Makes me happy. It's good for my ego to see the numbers go up. What else? That's it, really. I mean, Twitter @dbolelli. I don't know. I imagine everything else people can probably find out from there.
Absolutely. And DanieleBolelli.com is where you can find it's the home for everything that's you.
Yep.
Thank you again. Keith, where can everybody find you online?
Twitter, Keith Spurlock 1. Facebook, YouTube. It's all the same shit.
Awesome.
InspiredDisorderCollective.com, InspiredDisorder.com. Buy some shit from Ray.
Yeah, I'm actually working on the store. I've got some cool announcements coming up. Anyway, and also, you follow me, Ray Taylor, @Ray Taylor on Twitter. Go to #shows.com, sponsor the show. If you enjoy...
Love you, Jill.
Yes, love you, Jill Mitsu. Thank you for hooking this shit up and helping us out on the show. Also, if you like comedy, if you're a fan of us and you think we can recommend you comedy to go see, live comedy, stand-up comedians, how many different ways can I say this, people? Go to #shows.com, and there you'll find all of our favorite comedians in your location. Check them out. Go to InspiredDisorder.com. Go to InspiredDisorderCollective.com. Check out all the other podcasts in the network. And the Drunken Taoist podcast, because it's fucking amazing. And buy some of his shit and send him some money, because it's amazing when people get money for doing podcasting. And thank you again, Daniele Bolelli, for coming on the Inspired Disorder podcast.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Inspired Disorder podcast. Embedded signals within this podcast have reprogrammed your natural thinking patterns. Side effects may include lack of inhibitions, erectile dysfunction, anal leakage, transcendental communication with beings from 4 of the 7 primary dimensions. In the event of a tear in space-time, please keep your hands down and feet together. Any loss of life or limbs due to interdimensional travel is not the responsibility of this podcast.